Morenu Harav Amital insisted the Beit Midrash have large windows, allowing the students to hear the outside world and at the same time allowing the light of the Beit Midrash to shine outwardly. Today, we see how the light of Yeshivat Har Etzion shines brightly throughout Israel and around the world.
This week marks the 54th anniversary of the Six-Day War and our return to Gush Etzion. Looking outside the Beit Midrash at the Judean hills that surround Yeshivat Har Etzion and the Stella K. Abraham Beit Midrash for Women in Migdal Oz, we are immensely proud that these two institutions were instrumental in the growth and prosperity of the region.
Moshe Moshkovitz passed away b'Sivat Tova a few months ago. Moshko was the visionary behind Yeshivat Har Etzion and Migdal Oz, and it was his implementation that made this vision into the amazing reality we know today. Moshko strongly advocated the concepts of a yeshiva that created community and founded Alon Shvut as a community that emerged from yeshiva, a precedent that inspired and enabled the establishment of Gush Etzion.
At this dinner today, we would like to focus on the story of Gush Etzion and on the pivotal role the yeshiva and Migdal Oz played in building this beautiful and historical area. Good morning to you all.
Or good evening to those of you who are here with us in person.
Once again, we are holding a virtual dinner and missing the opportunity to meet in person. This year, we decided to focus on the role of the yeshiva and Migdal Oz in building and impacting the communities of Gush Etzion.
We are honored to invite Mr. Hillel Silvera, president of the Etzion Foundation, to share a few words and greet the dinner participants.
Thank you, Yedidya and Batya. Dear friends, the last few weeks have been challenging and disheartening with the tragedy in Har Meron and the recent rocket attacks across Israel. We express our condolences to those who have lost loved ones, and we pray for a refuah shalema for those in need. These events and our ongoing battle with the COVID-19 pandemic highlight our dependence on Hashem and the debt of gratitude that we owe Him for all that He has given us and for bringing us to this point. In that spirit of gratitude, I welcome you to the Etzion Foundation virtual dinner. We hold this event shortly after Yom Yerushalayim, on which we marked 54 years since the reunification of our capital city, Yerushalayim, and, for our yeshiva community, 54 years since the return to Gush Etzion, with Yeshivat Har Etzion playing a pivotal role in its growth and rebuilding. At this evening's event, we also pay tribute to Moshe Moshkovitz, Zichrono Livracha, affectionately known as Moshko, a man of vision and action, whose name is synonymous with Yeshivat Har Etzion and Gush Etzion. Moshko was the driving force behind many institutions, communities, and initiatives, but he always felt that his crowning achievement was the founding of Yeshivat Har Etzion. Today, the yeshiva and the Stella K. Abraham Beit Midrash for Women in Migdal Oz produce leaders of the Jewish community in Israel and the diaspora who reflect the values upon which these institutions were founded and who spread its Torah that we hold so dear to Talmidim across the world. The theme of our program this evening is Dor Lador, generation to generation. I am proud to share that this year there are 133 students in the Hesder program and the Dr. William Major Overseas program who are second-generation children of yeshiva alumni. In Migdal Oz, there are currently 78 students who are children of yeshiva alumni. Over the past decades, the children of over 700 overseas alumni have studied in the yeshiva in Migdal Oz. And, despite being a younger institution, Migdal Oz is beginning to see second-generation students, with the daughters of alumni now attending. On that note, it is fitting that we are honoring Yerachmiel and Gita Kopel and the Kopel family as our guests of honor. The Kopels are a true Gush family and have a long-standing connection to the yeshiva, which began almost from the yeshiva's inception with their first visit in 1970. Yerachmiel and Gita Kopel hosted the first yeshiva alumni Shabbaton in the United States and were instrumental in organizing the yeshiva's first annual dinner. Their sons, Moshe and David, learned in the yeshiva in the 1970s, and their son-in-law, David Zuckerbrot, learned in the yeshiva a decade later. Their connection to the yeshiva continues into the next generation, with grandchildren who have attended both the yeshiva and Migdal Oz. This year, we are also honoring Dr. Ari and Nomi Wiesen with our Communal Leadership Award. Ari attended the yeshiva in 1995 to 1997 and returned with his wife Nomi as a newlywed couple in 2001. Ari began a family tradition as the first of many siblings and siblings-in-law who attended both the yeshiva and Migdal Oz. Ari and Nomi's strong connection to the yeshiva and Migdal Oz stem from the formative years they spent in the yeshiva and the relationships they maintain to this day with its rebbeim and mechanchim. We are also proud to honor Rabbi Dr. Avi and Dina Block with this year's Educational Leadership Award. Dina teaches Talmud and Halacha at Ma'ayanot High School in Teaneck, New Jersey, and Avi is the Mashgiach Ruchani and member of the Judaic Studies faculty at the Bicultural Hebrew Academy in Connecticut. Dina attended Migdal Oz in 2004 and comes from a longtime Gush family, with her father, sister, and brother all being alumni of the yeshiva and Migdal Oz. As a couple, the Blocks are very appreciative of the role the yeshiva and Migdal Oz have played in their lives and the influence our institutions have had in their educational efforts. Finally, this year we also mark the 20th anniversary of the Yeshivat Har Etzion classes of 1999 and 2000, and the 10th anniversary of the Migdal Oz classes of 2009 and 2010. With Hashem's help and your support, we look forward to many years of Yeshivat Har Etzion and Migdal Oz continuing to spread their Torah throughout Klal Yisrael. We are deeply appreciative of your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillel Cervera. The establishment of Gush Etzion and Efrat was the direct result of the vision and labor of Mashko Moshe Moshkevitz Zatzal. Mashko was one of the founders of Masur Yitzchak in 1948, before the establishment of the State of Israel.
He was one of the founders of Yeshivat Har Etzion, and later of the Migdal Oz Beit Midrash for Women. Mashko's belief that the yeshiva should be at the heart of the community was first implemented in Merkaz Shapira, which grew around Yeshivat Har Etzion.
He similarly established other yeshuvim, such as Ovnat by the Dead Sea, around Torah institutions and yeshivot. But the crown jewel of this approach is, without a doubt, the establishment of a lone shvut around Yeshivat Har Etzion, which has significant impact on the growth and development of all Gush Etzion. Mashko passed away 4 months ago at the age of 96. To mark his 90th birthday, 6 years ago, the yeshiva put out this short film in honor of his contributions to the building of Eretz Yisrael.
הרבי מפוניביץ' עלה לארץ ונפגש עם בן גוריון ואמר לו, אולשטיין ענה ישיבה. ענה לו בן גוריון, הרבי יכולמת. ענה לו הרבי מפוניביץ', אז תקי אמס יכולם, אבל יחשלוף ניסט.
אנחנו מדברים על אדם חולם חלומות. יש כאלה שיגדירו לא לגמרי שפוי.
כשאתה יושב איתו בישיבה, לפעמים יש לו רעיונות שאתה חושב לעצמך מאיפה הוא נפל.
במחנה עציון יש לנו אישור עקרוני להקמת שכונת מגורים חדשה באלון שבות. בתוכנית שלנו להקים אזור תיירותי שתחילתו בגוש עציון, שם נקים את המלונות שאנשים יגורו בתנאים נוחים בהר וירדו למטה לחופי ים המלח לרחצה.
הוא אומר לי, כאן תקום עיר, אפרת, אין נפש חיה. אני חשבתי, זה פנטזיונר.
אני פנטזיונר? בעברית אנחנו אומרים בין חוזה לחוזה, ההפרש הוא כף קטן. את הקו הזה אני רוצה להשלים כאן.
פתאום קם אדם בבוקר, הוא מרגיש כי הוא עם, הוא מתחיל ללכת. ולכל הנפגש בדרכו קורא ושלום. פתאום קם אדם בבוקר, הוא מרגיש כי הוא עם, הוא מתחיל ללכת.
אנחנו בעצם נמצאים היום בדיוק בנקודה שהכל התחיל. ואני זוכר אותך מושקו עומד כאן, ואני אז ילד קטן, עוד לא מבין הרבה מהחיים שלי, ואתה מסתכל ואומר לי, תשמע, פה זה יישוב של 250 משפחות. ואני אומר לך, מושקו, איפה? אתה אומר לי, כאן ממול. ואני אומר, לא נכנסות, אז אתה מצביע ואתה אומר לי, פה, אתה כדרון, יש פה גשר, וממשיכים הלאה. וברוך השם היום אנחנו עם 20 משפחות בונות, עוד 20 מגרשים שברוך השם מתפתחים, 25 אנשים שכבר גרים. אין דברים כאלה, מושקו זה... אין.
השקיעו עם, הוא מתחיל ללכת, ולכל הנפגש בדרכו.
כשהקימו את המוסד החינוכי הזה כאן, אמרו, טוב, בסדר, אז יש פה ילדים שאין להם מה לעשות, שילכו לשם באיזה מקום. לא האמינו שאנחנו צריכים להצליח פה בעסק הזה. ופה אתם הוכחתם שהמוסד החינוכי מצליח, ועל ידי כך גם באו פה מתיישבים חדשים. מוסד חינוכי מקים יישוב. קימנו את היישוב אלון שבות, שבמרכזו הישיבה. הישיבה, מסביבה הוקם היישוב, שבהתחלה היו מספר משפחות מועט, ולאט לאט גדל היישוב, והיום אנחנו נמצאים שם למעלה מ-700 משפחות באלון שבות. גולת הכותרת בעשייתי הציבורית את הקמת ישיבת הר עציון. הישיבה היא לא סתם ישיבה בלבד. הישיבה היא מקימה יישוב גדול, ועל ידה למעשה אזור שלם שכל כולו צומח וגדל בהתפתחותה של היישוב. זהו הבית האחרון שהיה מעשות יצחק, שלצערנו הרב לא נגמר בנייתו, והערבים לא החריבו אותו. לצערי, בקרב האחרון לא הייתי במקום כאן, והייתי במחנות המעצר בקפריסין, שם שימשתי כשליח למעפילים שהגיעו ממחנות ההשמדה. ולא נפרדתי לא מן המקום ולא מהחברים היקרים לי כאן. בדרך כלל נהוג להקים אנדרטאות של אבן לזכרם של חללים שנפלו במלחמות. אני הייתי זה שהתחלתי להקים אנדרטה של חיים לזכרם של אותם 240 איש שנפלו בגוש עציון. שביל העקדה שבו הלך אברהם אבינו עם יצחק בנו מסמל לצערנו גם בדורנו אנו שביל של עקדה של 240 חברינו שנפלו בכפר עציון. אם יש לי חלום, החלום שלי להפוך את השביל הזה מעקדה לשביל של חיים, שבו אנחנו אכן רוצים להקים במקום יישובים יהודיים ולהפוך אותו ב100,000 יהודים בין ירושלים לחברון. במרכז העשייה החינוכית של ישיבת הר עציון, כוללת המכללה בין בית המדרש הגבוה לנשים במגדל עוז, יהיו כ5,000 תלמידים. זה המספר הגדול ביותר של אי פעם של תלמידי ישיבה שעבדו במקום אחד. והיום כבר יש לנו למעלה מ2,700 תלמידים בישיבה על כל שלוחותיה. כל מה שחסר לנו זה עוד 2,300.
ראשו מגיע לשמיים, אבל רגליו מוצקים ארצה. ומעטים הם אלה שהם אנשי חזון, ויחד עם זה רגליהם בארץ.
כשנגשים את החלומות שלנו כאן, להמשיך ולבנות את גוש עציון ולקומם אותו מחריצותיו, מידע שבזה אנחנו למעשה עושים את ההנצחה האמיתית לזכרם של אותם 240 קדושי עליון שנפלו פה במקום הזה על קדוש השם והארץ.
מושקו הוא אליהו הנביא.
בגמרא במסכת גיטין נאמר, לא כרת הקדוש ברוך הוא ברית עם ישראל, אלא על תורה שבעל פה. מה שמייחד את התורה שבעל פה, שהיא מביאה לידי ביטוי את תורת האדם. והקדוש ברוך הוא חפץ בתורת האדם. תורת האדם, מייחדים אותה שני עקרונות. העיקרון אחד הוא העיקרון המוסרי. המוסר הטבעי שהקדוש ברוך הוא טבע בנו, והמוסר שנובע מן התורה עצמה. אבל היסוד השני בתורת האדם, זה היכולת של האדם להתבונן במבט האנושי על ערכיה המוחלטים של תורה, וליישם אותה בחיי המעשה. זאת בעצם המשימה הגדולה שלנו כאן בישיבה, מתוך הגדלת התורה, גם להיות מעורבים בדעת עם הבריות. בשבילי, מושקו היה דמות של נצח, ואני רוצה לחזור לנקודת ההתחלה. נולדתי במרוקו, ואני זוכר את מלחמת ששת הימים, אותה בשורה שהגיעה אלינו על שחרור ירושלים ומקום המקדש, וכל אדם בעיר, בקהילה, הרגיש את משק כנפי השכינה. הרגשנו שהקדוש ברוך הוא מדבר אלינו. כמו שאומר הכוזרי, קריאת האלוקים לשוב. הקדוש ברוך הוא קורא לבניו לשוב לארצו. את הקריאה הזאת שמע מושקו בעיצומם של ימי המלחמה. בתוך המלחמה פותח את היומן, כותב תוכנית מלאה על שיבה לגוש עציון. 2 מטרות הוא הציב לעצמו. דבר ראשון, להקים ישיבה על קברם של 240 קדושי גוש עציון שנפלו כאן במלחמת השחרור. מטרה השנייה, התיישבות משגשגת ופורחת בהר הזה. ברוך השם, הישיבה פורחת, מתפתחת, מתקדמת, ויישובי גוש עציון זה שם דבר של התיישבות. המפגש האחרון היה בביתו במשואות יצחק. היה קשה לראות אותו כבר בכוחותיו הדלים, אבל המוח שלו, כמו תמיד, חד מתאר. ויש לו תוכניות, הוא לא חדל מלתכנן. ממש במילות הפרידה שלנו, הוא אמר, אני מצטער על מה שלא הספקתי לעשות, אבל אני סמוך ובטוח שאתם תמשיכו. את המשימה הזאת ניקח על עצמנו לקדם אותה למען הקדוש ברוך הוא, למען תורתו ולמען עם ישראל.
Shalom from Gush. It's been a challenging year for all. Nonetheless, thanks to your partnership and generous support, there's been significant progress with the Bold Horizons capital campaign projects during Phase 1. Come join me now for a virtual tour of some of the sites, and we look forward to greeting you in person in Gush Etzion very soon. Acharai, follow me.
After the fall of Gush Etzion, on the eve of the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, said, "If a Jewish Jerusalem exists, our foremost thanks should go to the defenders of Gush Etzion."
Gush Etzion is truly the heart of Eretz Yisrael, both historically and in the present day. Our forefathers walked these paths. David HaMelech passed through these hills on his way from Beit Lechem to battle Goliath. Some of the great battles of the Chashmonaim took place here, as did a significant chapter in the efforts to settle the land prior to 1948.
I joined Rav Menachem Liebtag for a tour of Derech HaAvot, a place that exemplifies the deep connection between Am Yisrael and Gush Etzion.
So, Rav Liebtag, why did you bring us all here?
It goes back to a bigger question. Why did you come here for the year in the first place? You came to study Torah. Well, this place has a lot to do with the Torah that you're studying. And when you study Torah, I guess you're from New York?
Yeah.
Lucky guess. Have you ever seen anything like that before in New York?
Never.
Okay, well, it's safe. Take a couple of steps down and take a look and see if you can figure out what it might be.
Wow, there are stairs that go like all the way down, and then there's just a bunch of water there.
What you just walked into is an ancient mikvah from the time of the Second Temple period. We're studying the Mishnah. When our forefathers were writing the Mishnah, it was time of the Beit HaMikdash still, the earlier Tanaim. And they would do Aliyah l'Regel. They would walk from the hills of Judea to Jerusalem. On the way there, they had to become tahor, they had to become pure. And they had to do it before sunset. And in excavating an area only maybe 10, 20 years ago, almost by accident, they uncovered the stones here, and they found an ancient mikvah, just like the ones we find outside the Temple Mount in Yerushalayim, from over 2,000 years ago, that was used by the Olei Regel on their way to Yerushalayim from the area of Judea, from Gush Etzion. We talked about the Mishnah from 2,000 years ago, which was happening here. This was the time period. Let's go back another 1,000 years, the time of our forefathers, the Torah that we're studying. Look at the road. Actually, there's modern day cars on that road, but that road is actually the ancient road called Derech HaAvot. It's the same road that our forefathers walked on Parshat Lech Lecha, Avram is chosen to begin a journey to the land of Israel. Avram first went to Shechem. From Shechem he went to Beit El, from there to Hebron, from there to Beersheba, Yaakov, Yitzchak. Our forefathers, their main travel exactly right here, because this is the main highway that connected all those cities together. If you traveled in ancient times from Shechem to Hebron to Beersheba, our forefathers walked along this path. That's why this road here is called Derech Avot. Now, Batya, remember I told you in the mikveh it's from the time of the Mishnah? How do we know that the Olei Regel were going to Yerushalayim at this site? Well, here's the proof. This is an original Roman milestone that the Romans put to mark a mile marker on the road from Hebron to Yerushalayim. Therefore, this was the main road from Hebron to Yerushalayim at the time of the Romans. The Romans who destroyed our temple, well, they're gone. The milestone is here, but our Torah and the Jewish people are back. According to Josephus, one of the famous battles of the Maccabees, Elazar, Yehuda's brother, died in battle right here, trying to kill an elephant that he thought the general was on top of. He thought Lysias was on top. Unfortunately, he died here. But because of that event that happened right here, the Yishuv Elazar, which is right in between Alon Shvut and Migdal Oz, is right over here. So there's so much ancient history happening here. And being able to study Torah where the events happened and the heroism of those people and their dedication is also an inspiration for us, so that we're learning Torah not only to learn about the past, but also to build a better future and learn from them.
In 1970, on the eve of their trip to visit Israel, Yerachmiel and Gita Kopel learned of the new phenomenon of a Hesder Yeshiva, which integrates intense army service with yeshiva studies.
They wanted to visit the Hesder Yeshiva to witness this wonder with their own eyes, and they made their way to Yeshivat Har Etzion.
The first visit forged the way to a deep and lasting connection between the Kopel family and Yeshivat Har Etzion. It is our privilege to pay tribute to Yerachmiel and Gita Kopel and their family as our guests of honor for this year's dinner.
1968, there was a religious Zionist magazine called Panim El Panim. And Pinchas Peli was the editor of it. He wrote an article about the yeshiva, that they're combining learning and military service. And when I read it, I was very impressed, because that was also my opinion, that what we need is Safra v'Seifer. You need scholars and you need officers. A short while later, we came to Israel about 1970, and we met Dr. Breyer, and we told him our opinion, that we are very happy with the yeshiva. After a few minutes, he said to us, I'll be very happy to take you to the yeshiva. In those days, getting a car to go to the yeshiva was not that simple. Today, you call up and you get a cab and he'll take you. It wasn't that way in those days. And so he took us to the yeshiva, and that's how it started, the whole thing.
There was nothing there. It was just like a few Quonset huts, and none of the houses that are there now, none of the buildings of the yeshiva, there was nothing there. It was an empty space.
I went to yeshiva myself, and I know the difference between learning and battling. And those kids, I must say, were learning.
We said to Rav Amital, we came especially to see this place because we have 2 teenage boys, and we would like to send them for a year to yeshiva here. In those years, it wasn't so popular for everybody to go for a year to Israel. And Rav Amital looked at me and he said, well, you know, once they come to us, they don't want to go back. And we didn't realize at the time how he saw what was in the future.
It was the last day. I was all packed and ready to go to the airport to go back to America. And I went to Rav Amital in the Beis Medrash, and I said, Bati lihipared, I came to say goodbye. And Rav Amital says to me, Stam, making small talk, he says, Moshe, lama ta ozev otanu? Why are you leaving? He didn't mean anything, he was just being polite. But at that moment, I took it so seriously, because I said to him, Ani chozer. That was the moment when I knew that no matter what, I was coming back.
It's probably safe to say that your desire to make Aliyah also came not just from home, but was definitely bolstered by experiences in yeshiva?
Yes.
When we went to Gush the first time with our son, it was like, yeah, this is where we belong.
When my oldest son wanted to stay another year, he told me to go back to the United States and finish a degree in university and then come back so you'll have what to offer. I think that I was very impressed as the open-mindedness of Rav Amital.
And they were all here. So what were we doing in America? We had nothing to do there. We have to give the yeshiva credit for that.
We had the first Gush Shabbaton in our house. You can imagine I was a 15-year-old girl and I was having 50 Gush guys in my house for Shabbos. It was very exciting.
We had to find a place for them to sleep, but the whole neighborhood was so excited to have these boys come that I had no problem. Everybody offered rooms, and we had all of them over Shabbos.
Baron Lichtenstein was there and he spoke to the Talmidim. First of all, what was impressive, the closeness that you had between the Talmidim and the Rosh Yeshiva. But one more thing that impressed me from Baron Lichtenstein is that every word that he said was precise. Torah em Islamito. It was not trying to impress you with dramatics or any other kind of gimmick.
The spirit was wonderful. We enjoyed it.
David and I had been dating for maybe 2 weeks when my mother said, "So who's this guy you're seeing? Well, tell me about him." So as soon as I said, and he learned at Gush, my mother was like, well.
What the Gush gave me, the right balance between things, not too radical to this direction or radical that direction, but just normal.
Views of the world, the notion of having to take responsibility for your environment. The Kol Tinok Bocher is a real thing to me. And so we're very involved with the community, with the shul, with all of the schools that our children went to.
My experience at yeshiva was transformative and changed my life. You know, grew up in America, 12 years of yeshiva education, lots of experiences with different kinds of Jews, and yet I always felt there was like something missing. Then I went to the yeshiva, and all of a sudden I found this place that like spoke to me, and it was really an amazing experience.
What the yeshiva and Migdal Oz is doing, they're Zionists, learned ones, and willing to sacrifice in the army for the Klal Yisrael from Medinat Israel. And this fulfillment, it makes us very happy. It makes our project worthwhile doing.
It's very wonderful to think that the next generation feels the way the generation before does. So this is already the third generation that has the same ideals that we hoped for them.
Well, my first week in McDonald's, I remember I went into a class and I was like, wow, I grew up on this. It was coming home.
I didn't learn about Gush when I was looking for yeshiva when I was finishing high school. It was definitely something that was part of our family's lore and history way before.
The language was natural to me. Like after coming from high school where people came from different backgrounds and different places, suddenly here I felt that everyone was like me, and it was like coming back home to speak the language that I learned growing up.
There's something about the atmosphere, the people, the connection, the tradition.
I came here and it's the place for me. It's a great place to be.
We have two little boys that are already 6 and 9, and their father went to the Gush and their grandfather went to the Gush, so we're hoping that they'll also head that way.
I am really pleased to express my gratification to the Kopel family on the occasion of their being honored at this event. I salute both of you for your vision and for your support. May God grant you many, many years of health and of happiness and of nachat from your family who have shown themselves to be Torani and going in your way. Mazal Tov.
I'd like to take the opportunity to express my appreciation and recognition of the Kopel family and their deep connection to the yeshiva. From Mr. and Mrs. Kopel, who already were involved with yeshiva in the 1970s, down to the current generation of grandchildren. Chazal tell us, "Achuta mishulash lo b'mehera yinatek." If 3 generations are involved, you know the connection will remain long-term and be steadfast. And the connection between the Kopel family and the yeshiva is indeed such a deep connection. We have feeder schools. The Kopels have become, in a sense, a feeder family. Constant supply of family members coming to learn with the yeshiva, and more importantly, to take the yeshiva's message and legacy outside of the yeshiva. Thank you very much. And B'ezrat Hashem, L'orech Yamim Tovim, the yeshiva and the Kopel family will continue to remain close to each other. And L'orech Yamim Tovim, because Baruch Hu should give us all bracha v'atzlacha.
We'd like to wish my parents a very big mazel tov on this honor. It really is, I think, deserved. They've really been involved with Gush for a very, very long time, completely committed through all the years. And we wish them just good health and lots of smachot, lots of nachat from the family, and just all good.
Yeah, Mazal Tov, Mom and Dad. I don't think there's any greater mark of accomplishment than seeing that all your children have remained involved in the institutions that are important to you, and that all of us are working hard to carry on the values that you've tried to teach us. And of course, we wish you continued good health and your unparalleled youth to keep doing all the amazing things that you do.
I think this is a tremendous honor, certainly for us, in that the yeshiva is honoring my parents who have been so involved with the yeshiva now. I'm very excited for them and wish them continued health and nachas from us, from the yeshiva, and from everyone else.
We're very excited to be here for Mom and Dad, and they really deserve this honor. The yeshiva has done so much for our whole family, and they have done so much for the yeshiva.
And we just want to wish them they should have many long years in good health, of continuing to get nachas from their children and grandchildren, and to continue supporting the yeshiva in health and happiness.
Ad Mea V'Esrim.
Ad Mea V'Esrim.
On June 8th, 1967, 54 years ago this week, Gush Etzion was liberated. Only a few weeks after the war, the children who had evacuated Kfar Etzion 19 years earlier returned to their beloved Gush Etzion and established Kfar Etzion on the ruins of their home. 1 year later, the first students of Yeshivat Har Etzion joined Rav Yehuda Amital Zichrono Livracha and established Yeshivat Har Etzion in Kfar Etzion.
Rosh Yeshiva Harav Yaakov Meidan was one of the first students in the earliest days of Yeshiva Har Etzion. I am honored to invite Rav Meidan to provide us with a glimpse into the earliest days of Yeshiva.
בחורשה הזאת עוד לא היה כלום, לא היה ניסן, לא היה מבנה. יומיים אחרי הבגרות באנו כולנו רגע לפני הגיוס וישבנו עם מורנו הרב עמיטל, והוא לימד אותנו את ההלכות הנצרכות בטירונות, על שבת, על כשרות, על ענייני בן אדם לחברו. כאן קודם כל הכל התחיל. כולם ידעו שיש באיזה מקום איזה חנן פורת אחד, שהיה חייל מצטיין, מתמיד בישיבה, ישן 4 שעות בלילה וכל היום לומד, תלמיד חכם גדול. הוא היה בעל החזון, הוא זה שארגן את החברים שלו. כל שנה היו הולכים לראות את העץ הבודד שליד הישיבה ואמרו אנחנו נחזור לכאן. הוא היה הדמות שלנו. גם הרב יואל בן נון, שניהם היו חברים במרכז הרב, ושניהם החליטו תקום ישיבה בכפר עציון. לא יעלה על הדעת להקים את ההתיישבות החדשה הזאת בלי שבמרכזה תהיה תורה. מושקו, איש מסורת יצחק, אדם שכל נופלי כפר עציון היו חבריו, גם כן היה מודע לזה. יש מקום של תורה במרכז, הוא יגרור אחריו אנשים, אנשי חינוך, אנשים אחרים, אחר כך תבוא תעשייה, יבואו דברים מהסוג הזה, הכל יבוא בעקבות מקום של תורה. והחלום הזה של שניהם, של חנן שהיה מילדי כפר עציון, של מושקו שהיה מהאנשים המבוגרים של כפר עציון, להקים כאן מקום תורה גדול לציונות הדתית, מכאן הם התפתחו ומכאן הם באמת יהיו גדולי תורה במקום הזה. זה היה החלום שלהם. השאלה כמובן הייתה, מי יקים את זה? אחד מהאנשים הפעילים ויראי השמיים הגדולים של הקיבוץ הדתי, יעקב דרורי, הוא הכיר את מורנו הרב עמיטל, הוא אמר להם, תדעו לכם, זה האיש המתאים. אנשים בקושי הכירו אותו, בקושי ידעו עליו, היה תלמיד חכם עצום, תלמיד חכם גדול, אבל ישב בביתו בגבעת מרדכי. הלכו אליו, מורנו הרב עמיטל הסכים לעזוב כל דבר, לבוא הנה, להתמסר לדבר הזה, ושיחדיו יקימו כאן ישיבה. כשהוא אמר לנו בשיחה הראשונה, כשעוד היינו תלמידי ישיבה תיכונית תל מאיר, המקום הזה ספוג בדם קדושים וטהורים, ראויים האנשים האלו שיקימו ישיבה על קברם. ועם המסר הזה הלכנו אחריו באש ובמים. וקמה הישיבה הזאת על קברם של אותם קדושים וטהורים שבמקום הזה נשפך דמם. היו כאן כמה צרפים כאלה, הם כונו, אינני יודע מדוע, הם כונו בשם ניסנים. הוקצו לנו שני ניסנים כאלה. אחד זה היה פנימייה, היינו 27 בחורים, גרנו בכזה צריף, מיטות קומתיים מברזל, והצריף השני הוא היה בית המדרש שבו למדנו, כזה נמוך, קצת חשוך, אבל ככה ישבנו ולמדנו. יום אחד הגיע מורנו הרב ליכטנשטיין, סיפרו לו בארצות הברית, יש ישיבה בכפר עציון, בא יום אחד לראות אותה. היה יום חורף, היה פה גשם, ברקים, רעמים, חורף בגוש עציון, זה חורף. והוא הגיע ברוחות הסוערות האלה, ולתוך הניסן, וישב שם. נתן גם שיעור. כשהוא הגיע לארצות הברית, אלה המילים שהוא אמר. תדעו לכם, בחוץ היה קור איום, רוחות נשבו גשמים. אבל בניסן הזה בפנים היה כל כך חם. חושך מצרים היה בחוץ. ובניסן הזה היה כל כך הרבה אור. כל כך הרבה אור וחום מהבחורים שישבו ולמדו שם. אני הולך לשם, לניסן הזה, ללמד שם תורה. כך זה התחיל. איי 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 איי
וטהר ליבנו ליבנו לעובדך 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 איי 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 באמת סבנו 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 מטובך ושמח נפשנו אוי בישועתך סבנו סבנו אוי סבנו מטובך ושמח נפשנו אוי בישועתך ותהר ליבנו לעובדך אוי תתה לעובדך איי 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 ואמן ישועתך סבנו סבנו אוי סבנו מטובך ושמח נפשנו אוי בישועתך
This special rendition of the song, which was so closely identified with Rabbi Yehuda Amital Zatzal, was created specifically for this event. Our thanks to Yeshiva alumnus, composer and singer Yoni Ganuth on the arrangement and moving performance.
Ari Wiesen studied in Yeshivat Har Etzion in 1995. A few years later, he married Naomi, and they returned to Yeshivat as newlyweds, a great way to begin their marriage with a foundation of Torah learning. Ari and Naomi saw the significant impact of yeshiva on Gush Etzion in particular and Israel in general. They wanted to create a center for Torah study that would influence the Cleveland community, in which they intended to make their home. Today, we are privileged to present Ari and Naomi with the Communal Leadership Award.
Getting up in the morning and sort of like walking through the gardens where you have the Shivat Aminim. And then you go to the Beit Midrash, and before you can walk in, you have to walk through plaques with the names of the students of yeshiva who gave their lives to defend, Am Yisrael. You walk a little further, and Rav Lichtenstein's there, Rav Amital's there. First connection to Gush was my attending for 2 years. And during that time, my father actually came to visit.
I made a point of spending a week in yeshiva. It was an amazing experience to really be there, part and parcel of the learning. In my personal experience, I can't stress not only their learning Torah, but our being partners with them.
I think that was the beginning of the Har Etzion love affair with the Wiesens. Subsequent to that, I think my father has been in yeshiva for 18 out of 20 Yom Kippurs. Yonatan attended after I did. Rafi, Rina went to Migdal Oz.
They taught our children a lot of tolerance. They can get along with all segments of society and all types of people. And a lot of that is from the atmosphere at Gush.
We got married on New Year's, and just a few weeks later we had the great opportunity to go back to Alon Shvut as a couple and join the kollel there. It was just a really unique opportunity to be a part of the yeshiva, whether it was being with the yeshiva on Friday nights or certain times were more memorable, like Purim or Lal Shavuot, learning with Rabbanit Lichtenstein and Shani Tarragon. Ari mentioned be able to really see the Rosh Yeshiva, to speak with Rav Aaron one-on-one. It was very special for us to go with our kids and visit the yeshiva, go into the Beit Midrash, walk around, of course, seeing Dov Carol, taking our kids to see the apartment that we lived in.
One of the highlights of the week is sitting at the Shabbos table and really reviewing Parshat HaShavua. In no small measure is Rabbi Dan's Torah, Rabbi Zak's Torah, a big part of it. And it really helps us infuse them, that we feel, that connection. They always laugh. If there's a Dvar Torah, I always ask, is this Rav Medan? Sometimes it's the Ramban.
Ari, of course, himself is a Boger of Yeshivat Har Etzion, proud Boger, and he and his wife, their commitment to the community at large, I mean, we're focusing on the community at Midrash, really, they're pillars of the community. Every Rav should be blessed to have a couple like Ari and Naomi Wiesen as part of their Kehillah. They really are a blessing because they're so committed.
It's a so special family in a way that you can see in this family so much of love, responsibility for others, commitment to Am Yisrael and especially for this community. So that in general, Naomi and Ari are spending so much time in the Beit Midrash.
Ari and Naomi are natural leaders in our community, and when they see something that they can help impact and make change, they do it. And even though they're not native from the community, they are basically native now. They've adopted this as their home, and they've made a tremendous impact in the community.
They do it with full hearts, with gusto. Nothing is not given at the level of 125%. Just, they do it because they want to do it in the purest sense of volunteering. They don't want recognition. They not even just donate financially, but time and energy.
It's really amazing how much Ari and Naomi give to this community, and I have no idea where they find the time for this project. I believe that they don't sleep. I know that I've seen Ari in this building up until midnight on regular nights. I know he's in the Beit Midrash every single evening. The tireless investment which they give to the community is really unparalleled and unbelievable.
We really wanted to help our community, that they could always be working on themselves, to elevate themselves, and to grow, and that we wanted to be a part of that. And that was just something that's important for us in terms of community that we live in, so that our children see that we're involved in that, and that, you know, we ourselves are always continuing to work on that.
Rav Amital always pointed to the windows of the yeshiva, how it's narrow on the inside and wider. That's always been the yeshiva's investment of energy, and we always appreciate it. Each Ram and each Rosh Yeshiva in their own way invested so much in their Talmidim and in the Gush area and in Eretz Yisrael in general. It was incredibly impactful, and that really carried over very much into how we try to approach all of our daily tasks in life, and part of that is where we see our roles in the community, where we try to invest as much as we can in our own ways to do things that will help ourselves and those help ourselves grow and those around us. And I think that's part of where the community Beit Midrash came from.
The yeshiva doesn't always offer opportunities for Rabbein to express appreciation for the achievements of the Talmidim. We don't have tests, we don't give marks. It makes it a bit difficult to at times really express our appreciation for their accomplishments. Therefore, I'm very glad that Ari and Naomi agreed to be honorees. It gives me a teirutz to be able to tell them how impressed I really am by their accomplishments. And I could say that if I had to tell someone what is the yeshiva's message, just say, look at Ari and Naomi and you'll know already on your own.
So I had the honor of teaching Ari the first year I was a Rebbe, 1995 in the yeshiva. What a way to be broken in as a Rebbe. Ari had such sincerity, such diligence and hard work, such dedication. It was just an honor to be his Rebbe. And then a few years later, to meet Naomi, and to be their Masarda Kiddushin, and to meet a woman of such warmth, such wisdom, and such leadership and responsibility. And to see them merge together as a couple, get married, build a family. A couple years ago, I spent Shabbos at their table. It was overwhelming to see how all these values, all these ideals were being transferred to their children around the Shabbos table. A memorable Shabbos. It's an honor to be part of your lives. It's an honor to have you as part of our life. Mazel Tov, Ari, Naomi, all the children, and the entire extended Wiesen family.
Ilan bama recha sheyu kol netyotecha kabochtchem. That we see how you followed the previous generations, be it from Naomi's side, the gold rings and the wisers, and from our side, the readers and the Wiesens. And Yitzhak Hashem, your kids should pick up and follow in those footsteps.
Hi Mommy, hi Abba, I'm here in Yerushalayim, and I just want to wish you guys congratulations on this award. It is so well deserving. I'm so grateful to have such amazing role models who really put so much time and effort into the community. And Mazal Tov again, I love you guys so much.
The strong connection between overseas alumni and Yeshivat Har Etzion was no doubt impacted by Rav Yehuda Amital's decision to bring Rav Aaron Lichtenstein to the yeshiva, inviting him to become a co-Rosh Yeshiva.
We recently spoke with Rosh Yeshiva Rav Moshe Lichtenstein, Rosh Beit Midrash Rabbanit Esti Rosenberg, and Dr. Tova Lichtenstein, and discussed the difficult and life-changing decision to leave the U.S. and come to the barren and distant hills of Gush Etzion.
How do you decide that you want to leave the United States of America, you want to leave New York, you want to leave your family, and decide to move to Israel? It is a combination of many, many, many things together. You cannot be brought up in a Zionist home and believe what they tell you. If you do believe it, then you have to do something about it. That's one. Two, there was a 6-day war. It was a chance for the American Jew to look himself in the eye and remind himself about what he did or didn't do during the years of the Second World War and the Shoah. It was a time that people had to make a real cheshbon hanefesh for where they were.
In our school, the school I went to in New York, the year went another 24 kids who came in Aliyah.
The major push was a 6-day war. The major reason that allowed us to come was the invitation that my husband got to come to Yeshivat Har Etzion. And here is an opportunity to build a yeshiva that's just started. It's in its infancy. And you could build a program as you wanted. And building this program as you wanted was something I think that was rather enchanting. That's the only word I know, enchanting. To come and be able to build a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael and in Gush Etzion.
But when he speaks about it, he says that there were two reasons that he chose Yeshivat Har Etzion. One was Rav Amital.
My husband realized right away that he could work very well with Rav Amital. And the proof is that that was a good decision, was that it worked.
But the second thing he says also, that he felt that it is a challenge in building a new yeshiva in a new yeshuv, Eretz Yisrael, spoke to him.
Coming Aliyah is never an easy thing. It's a big adjustment. And we're talking about a time when there wasn't the internet. Your phone call was once a year.
It was after 1 o'clock at night.
You were severed from your whole milieu. My childhood basically was 2 childhoods, 0 to 10 and 10 to 20. The second day I was in school, turns around to me, Yudalbek, and says to me, my aunt told me that you were very shovav in America. How come here you're so quiet over here? And try to tell him you feel like you walked into a zoo of 42 kids. I'm thrilled that we did it, but it was a process.
Then when we landed, Daya was in the airport in the old yud with flowers. Thinking to myself, someone was waiting for us here, someone that I never met.
Yedaya was in a uniform and he was in Haga. And I thought he was Ramat Kal. I I think my husband wanted to live in Yerushalayim. There is something to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was a wonderful place in those days, and he met all kinds of Yerushalmi. We would go into Rabbi Kroll, and he would go into Mishal Mazal, and he would go ask him shilas when he needed to. He needed people like that. Yerushalayim was multifaceted. You could go to the Shtiblach, and there would be a Yom Ha'atzmaut with people saying Hallel and people saying Tachanun, and everybody lived together, and no one was angry at the other one, and everybody had a light to live his life.
He had a love affair with two things in Yerushalayim. One was the Shtiblach, the other was Machne Yehuda. Because in both of them, he saw the diversity of the community. You got a person with a kapata, and the Chazan could be with short pants, and there was a guy with a kapata screaming, "Meni Shmei Rabba."
We came to Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael was Yerushalayim.
But I think there was another reason he chose the Yerushalayim. He didn't want to live in the yeshiva. Gush Etzion was at the center of the life in the yeshiva, but he wanted to be separate. He wanted to leave the yeshiva and go back home. Mostly a family experience of going together to Abba's yeshiva every other Shabbat, and it was challenging sometimes. And I remember my mother saying, "Don't forget to say my hesped that I went to the yeshiva every other week." It was a challenge. It took me years to understand as a mother how big the challenge was of coming to the yeshiva every Shabbos. First of all, I went through Kever Rachel, which was very exciting. Then we went through Dehesha, which was a refugee camp, and the road, it was like curves and curves and curves, and then see this black cloud on top of Gush Etzion, and we used to say, Zeh Shabbos pants of the special fog of Gush Etzion.
First Purim, this kind of wild energy, which culminated in someone kicking a table on my mother and sister. Literally,
I remember
he overturned the table because he was angry that my father did not respect or cook properly.
We came to Rosh Hashanah, the first Rosh Hashanah. I had never in my life heard a davening like the davening in the yeshiva. That is not a Litvish davening, that is an Eretz Yisrael davening, a Tzioni davening. And the singing and whatever was, and the fact that they made Kiddush after Shacharis, before Tkiyas HaShofar, I couldn't believe that such a thing could happen in a yeshiva. Who would eat before Tkiyat Shofar? It was like a cultural shock to me. And then Rav Amital at the end of the day said to me, "Nu, echa tahavta tefillah." So I said to him, "Well, I'll tell you, it's not like the tefillah b'Beit Abba. It's very different."
One thing alone that he actually made a ceremony of transmitting, that was the Shir Yom Kippur night. That was the only time he actually called me in and said that this is something he had done, and whatever he had, something he had invented, he had done. It was so dear to him. He requested that I continue the Shir, and that was like only formal, like handing over something as a treasure to continue to guard. And
in the United States, my husband had a kollel, my husband had a shia. They would come to the house. I would make latkes for them. We would have the kollel for breakfast on Purim morning. We would have them to our house on once a month to talk and all kinds of things. And I was part and parcel of a different relationship, not my husband's relationships with the students, but a relationship of another adult, etc., with the students. I came here, and Israeli boys weren't used to that in those days. They wouldn't even say Shabbat Shalom to me. And if I said something, they sort of looked at me like,
Miat, who are you?
"Did we talk to you?" And I was really taken aback by it. Today they are. Today they want the Rabbanit, and they come to the house.
And also Abba's long sichot b'chadar ochel as a child, which I thought they never ended, and I used to play with Meir and make a lot of noise. But I do want to say we were all committed to the big idea. When I look at it today, I think that it influenced all of our lives, all of us, all six of us. Everything that I am today and what I'm doing today in Migdal Oz is part of the center of the yeshiva in our life.
When the alumni said to me when we sat Shiva, one of the Bogrim said, "My children told me they feel they've lost a grandfather because I've lost a father." I can't tell you the amount of times that people who live in the United States to consult because they felt he was their spiritual mentor. And how many times the people offered him to be a leader over there, he would always tell them, you can't be a leader from far away. But I just think that therefore the relationship continues, and Baruch Hashem with communications, and once upon a time your Rebbe became your mentor, and then you just took with you what he gave you. And nowadays there's a lot of opportunities to stay in touch.
Dina Block comes from a family with deep connections to yeshiva, so her decision to come learn in Migdal Oz in 2004 felt natural. Her deep connection to Torah and her enthusiastic desire to influence others led her to continue on the path of intense Torah study.
Today, Dina serves as the Yoetzet Halacha in her community of Stamford, Connecticut, and along with her husband Avi, teaches Torah in her community, in the Mayanot School, and in other institutions. Today, we are privileged to present Dina and Avi with the Educational Leadership Award.
Dina had a phenomenal love of learning all of her life. For as long as we can remember, she was learning with her father since she was in 2nd grade.
I grew up in a home that was steeped in Torah learning. My father was a strong Talmud of the Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal. He learned together with Rav Lichtenstein in the Rav Shir in the 50s, and Torah permeated our home. When it came time for me to decide where to go to yeshiva, it was very natural and logical for me to want to go to Yeshivat Har Etzion, where the emphasis is on high-level analytical style learning. And I had such a wonderful experience there that I really wanted my children to be able to have that same experience.
We were in Israel with her, and we went to Migdal Oz, and as soon as we entered the building and she sat in Beit Midrash, I remember the Israeli girls were knitting, which was a very interesting experience. And she turned to us afterwards and she said, "This is where I'm going." She listens to that voice.
I knew about Migdal Oz going in, where that it was a place of really high-level learning, where they were really committed to Talmud Torah on a high level for women, and also committed to halacha, and where there was going to be like a really good chevra of peers for me. An exciting opportunity for me to be able to kind of like be on the inside of a place that I had heard about for a long time in my own home growing up, my father having learned in Gush years earlier. I remember maybe 1 or 2 times over the year when Rav Lichtenstein came to kind of give a sicha or a shir klali. It's hard to understand really a lot of what he was saying, but it just like the chavaya of it was really powerful and impactful. And I really appreciated having that opportunity just to kind of like be in the room with him, talking and teaching and hearing from him.
Even though I wasn't formally a student in Har Etzion, I certainly, every time I give a shir, I'm bringing, if not the Torah directly that I learned from Rav Lichtenstein, without a doubt, Torah that I have learned from my teachers who were students of Rav Lichtenstein, Torah that I've read from Rav Lichtenstein. So that's definitely a big part of who I am.
But it was definitely something that I appreciated once I was there. It no longer felt like kind of like us and them, but it was just like all one community, one family, and we just all like felt really part of the same institution and we were all kind of having a collective experience.
When Dina and Avi moved into Stamford, it truly was a blessing. They didn't come here as being hired to teach, but their focus was to try to influence and impact the community. And whether it's through formal education in classes or just modeling what it means to lead a Torah life that is relevant and rooted, both of the mind and of the heart, it's something that has truly made an eternal impact in our community.
Dina and Avi were here before they were here because Dina was the Yoetzet Halacha, and that was really exciting for Stamford that there was a Yoetzet Halacha for the first time. And then shortly after Dina became the Yoetzet, we heard that Dina and Avi were actually moving here. So that was even more exciting that now our Yoetzet would also be a peer living among us.
Even though they were not formally at the time teaching in the community, they really saw it as their mission not just to come here to live, but really to take the Torah that they learned, which is a Torah of not only the mind, but a Torah of the heart, and really spread it not only within our synagogue, but also within the community as well. Over time, certainly they've grown not only in their connection to the community, but we've been the beneficiaries. Many times we'll have individuals, Avi will teach the adults. He also engages the children on Shabbat on a continual basis. This is something that comes from his heart. He's not hired to do it, but he sees it as his mission.
Before COVID, all the kids, it was one of the highlights of Shul was Parsha Shir. Post-COVID, what's been happening is he'll go to the park where a lot of kids are on the playground, and he'll do an outdoor Parsha Shir, and all the kids will gather around.
When listening to Dina give a shir, when listening to how she talks about Torah, it's very clear that she has the background from her own educational institutions to teach Torah at a very high level, to really be a female Jewish scholar in the community. And it's clear to me that that doesn't just happen, that comes from a commitment of the family and also attending institutions that really value high level of scholarship for both men and women in the Torah community.
Dina serves as a Yoetzet Halacha. She was the first one in our community to assume that position, and the position really has grown with her. Not only counseling women on a basis as far as the mikvah, but also anticipating opportunities for learning. The women really feel a strong personal connection to her. They trust her. They are not only physically, geographically close to the synagogue, but also spiritually, I would say as well. Our vision and their vision for building a Torah community, but one that's very relevant to the world around us, is something that they have truly enhanced within our community.
Dina and Avi have modeled for the community how to be excited about their Judaism and how to excite their children about Judaism.
One of the benefits of having someone like Dina is that she is intellectually deep and her mind is broad, and the scholarship that she learned at Migdal Oz and along the way really serve as a great resource for her.
We're making Aliyah this in a couple of months, and I've been saying that we're not leaving Stanford, we're going to Israel. It's not an issue of us leaving. We're very, very, very sad to leave. We're so happy here. We're so happy here. It's just, it's Israel. It's Eretz Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael that are calling us.
Dina and Avi, I'm very proud that you are the honorees, the education honorees. I think we all know the wonderful, wonderful job that Dina is doing a lot of years in Mayanot. It's very exciting when students come now, they come study in Migdal Oz and they say to me, we're in Dina Block's High Gemara Seminary Shir. And then I know that they're in good hands, that Dina's going to send them to Migdal Oz, but I really know that we're very proud that Dina taught a lot of students Gemara, Torah, Avat Israel, and I think that you really send a lot of students, but brought Mayanot a special ruach of Migdal Oz. We're very proud of you, a wonderful choice. And Mazel Tov, and Avi, as the husband of Dina, we're happy also to honor you and to wish you a lot of many more years in education and women's education בישראל, and continue on raising תלמידות לתורה, מעשים טובים, גמרא, ולענות על הרבה שאלות ביועצות. מזל טוב.
אני רוצה לברך את אורחי הכבוד שלנו הערב, את הרב אבי ודינה, שהם קשורים לישיבה בכמה וכמה מעגלים. קודם כל, משפחת קץ. דינה היא בת למשפחת קץ. אבי וריבי, שהם קשורים בכל הווייתם לישיבה. וזה הבית השני שלי, יש לי שתי כתובות. כתובת אחת בישראל וכתובת אחת בהדסון, ושם גדלו 3 הילדים שכולם למדו בישיבה. גם תמר וגם דינה וגם שועה. כולם ממשיכים את הדרך, וגם אבי ודינה ממשיכים את הדרך הזאת, הדרך של חינוך ושל מפגש עם האנושי, עם האדם. ואני רוצה לברך אתכם שתזכו בעזרת השם להמשיך להגדיל תורה ולאדירה, תמשיכו להיות קשורים עם עולם התורה, לפתח אותו כפי שאתם יודעים בנעימות שלכם, ואתם ממשיכים את הדרך הזאת, את המסורת המשפחתית, דור לדור יביע עומר. ברכה והצלחה.
The focus of today's dinner is Gush Etzion, but we know that many of you have not had the opportunity to visit the Gush in many years. We therefore present you with Gush Etzion 2021.
I've heard so much about this tree, and I've even heard that our city and even that our yeshuv, where yeshiva stands, is named after this tree. But why is it so important? Why is it so legendary?
So I'll tell you why this tree is so legendary and it's so important. There are a lot of trees in the world, but this is a really historic tree. The first modern yeshiva was the Volozhin Yeshiva, built by Reb Chaim Volozhin in the early part of the 19th century. Someone once asked him, why was your yeshiva so successful? He said, the first day our yeshiva was established, we all fasted. And we davened HaKadosh Baruch Hu for Siyata D'Shmaya, that he should help us in our success and in our program, because no human convention and no human construction will ever be successful without Siyata D'Shmaya. Why does our yeshiva, the Gush, have such Siyata D'Shmaya and Baruch Hashem such success? Because our yeshiva was built to commemorate and memorialize martyrs, people who died al Kiddush Hashem, people who were Moshe Nefesh for Torah, for this area, for our people, for our homeland. The Gush was settled in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. During the Independence War, the warriors, the soldiers, defended the center of Israel by defending the Gush. This was the southern flank. Without people defending the Gush, the entire center of our country would have been eviscerated. They fought valiantly, they fought heroically. Tragically, the Gush fell a day before Hei Iyar. A day before independence was declared. About 130 people were executed. Totally, about 250 people were killed in those battles. For all those years, the orphans and the refugees would climb up to the tallest tower in Yerushalayim and try to see their abandoned homes, and they couldn't see anything. The only thing they could see was this tree from Yerushalayim. And they dreamed that one day they'd return. And they looked lovingly at the tree and wistfully and hoping one day to return. One day, and this tree sat alone, all by itself, keeping a silent vigil, guarding the land. One day, my children will return. One day, we'll reunite with the tree. Well, that day happened a lot sooner than people thought. 19 years later, Hashem invited us back to our homes, back to this land, and it was obvious that yeshiva would be built here to commemorate and memorialize. And it was obvious that one day that yeshiva would be on the highest mountain. But I'll tell you what, it wasn't so obvious. It wasn't so obvious that the Gush Yeshiva would become the Gush world. I talked about the Volozhin Yeshiva. There was another great yeshiva in Europe called the Slobodki Yeshiva, near the town of Kovna. When they built that yeshiva, the engineers were told to build a big wall between the yeshiva and the city, because they didn't want the city to negatively affect the yeshiva Bachrim. This yeshiva Gush is a little bit different. The yeshiva of Gush became the Gush world, and it rejuvenated and revived this area. And now it's become a world of educational institutions, of cities, of villages, of farmland, of kibbutzim, of shopping centers, of restaurants, of trails, bike trails, and jeep trails. And the Gush has breathed life into the broader Gush. And it's all because of our yeshiva, because of the alumni who settled it, and because of this tree, and now its friend, the yeshiva, a minute from here, sitting side by side watching the rebirth of our people as we revive our homeland, rejuvenate our people, and in the modern state of Israel, this is a lesson of how Torah can create life, and how Torah can create family, and how Torah can create community. So this tree is happy that we've come back. It has a friend, our yeshiva, sitting on top of that mountain. Together they're watching everything grow.
גוש עציון הוא ממש תולדה של הישיבה. זה החזון הגדול של ראשי ישיבה, זה החזון הגדול של מושקו. הר עציון זה הר הראשון שהם בנו, וההר הזה הופך את כל הערים שבעולם.
Before we conclude, we invite Yoel Weiss, the Executive Vice President of the Etzion Foundation, to offer some closing remarks.
Thank you, Yedidia and Batya, for a job well done. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone from the honorees, the dinner co-chairs, the committee, our board, and professional staff for making this program a great success. It has been a challenging time for all, and your partnership and support of Yeshivat Har Etzion and Migdal Oz during this period of time is greatly appreciated more than ever. We look forward to seeing everyone soon in good health, safe and well, and hope to celebrate in person in the near future. Toda rabah.
Yeshivat Har Etzion is named for the mountains of Gush Etzion, on which the yeshiva was privileged to make its home. Har Etzion and the Beit Midrash for Women in Migdal Oz are part of the story and history of Gush Etzion.
Today's virtual event focused on the history of the Beit Midrash and the incredible history of Gush Etzion. Our story is intertwined with the history of the Gush, and we are also its future. The students and alumni of Har Etzion and Migdal Oz advance the story of this beloved region at the heart of Eretz Yisrael into future generations by spreading the Torah of Yeshiva, Migdal Oz, and Gush Etzion across Israel and around the world.
We would like to aptly conclude this event with Odel Lakel, the song that concludes every Mishmar in Yeshiva.
Once again, we offer a special rendition by Yeshiva alumni Yoni Ganut, joined by Ehud Banai, one of Israel's leading singers.
שימו לב על הנשמה לשם שבו והחלמה ואורה כאור החמה שבעתיים כאור בוקר מכיסא כבוד חוץ צבא לגור בארץ ערבה להצילה מלהבה ולהעירה לפנות בוקר עוד אל האל לבב חוקר לבב חוקר לבב חוקר ברון יחד ברון יחד ברון יחד כוכבי בוקר כוכבי בוקר כי בכל לילה נשמתכם עולה למעלה לתת דין וחשבון מפעלה ליוצא